People who met their partners after 30, how did it happen? Do you wish you had met earlier? As somebody who just turned 30, I'd like to think it's not nearly as weird as Reddit thinks to meet somebody so old. New neighbor moved into the second floor studio and was chatting with me from his balcony while I worked on an art project in the yard. Thought nothing of it, till some houseguests insisted I come up and meet their friend. Small world. Weeks later he told me he was flirting with me, but I was oblivious, as usual. We had 20 wonderful years together till he died suddenly, and yes, I do wish we had met earlier, cause then we would have had more time together. Wow. Thank you all for the awards, it's the first time. For those who wanted to know, he died of a massive heart attack at 64. My CPR didn't help, and either did the EMTs. It was one of the hardest things I ever went through, but I would go through it again for those 20 years. Sent her a message on OkCupid, but then she set her account to inactive without seeing my message. 2 years later, she reactivated her account, looked at her old messages, saw mine at the top of the queue, and the rest is history. Both of us were married 10 to 15 years previously. It honestly took the growth of our previous relationships to be able to have the meaningful relationship that we have now. Funny how your life being in shambles turns into the best thing you ever could have imagined, and having a partner that is your true partner. This post is an ad. The weekend before Valentine's Day, all the top-level comments are about online dating and all have years of activity, no activity, and suddenly today, which means they were bought and sold accounts. Also, 30 is the median age for online dating. Match.com. I was 30, she was 28. We are now married and just had our first kid, legit hours ago. Just scrolling through Reddit while the nurses do their thing, and yes, I wish we met so much earlier. Not to sound cheesy, but she is my everything. Edit. Thanks for all the awards, kind strangers. Baby and mom doing great. Changed my first diaper. It was an everything diaper, and OMG. Yes, I wish we'd met earlier, by about 5 years. As we lurch towards the end of our lives, I would love another second, minute, hour or day with the best person on the planet. We met the old-fashioned way, in a restaurant through a mutual friend. I had to work out of town for a couple of months after meeting, but on returning we quickly moved into together and married in 1990. So almost 35 years ago. We didn't have cell phones in 1986, much less the internet. Fax machines were a big thing. Different world. Different times. We met through Craigslist. IIRC, I was lonely looking for someone to see movies with. She was looking for more. But after a few weeks of chatting we met up, and OMG the sparks and chemistry. Our first date lasted 9 hours long. Here we are, still madly in love, 11 years later, and 2 kids, 4 states, 4 apartments, 2 houses, and our 10-year anniversary in September. Edit. Fixed some typos. Wish we had met earlier. Hell no. We were both in our early 30s, and it was perfect because we were mature enough to know what we wanted and were both ready to settle down. In my 20s I was immature, wild, and not marriage material. Met at work. He was an acquaintance for years prior, but the time wasn't right then. I'd say it worked the way it was supposed to for us. Met through Bumble. I was close to giving up on finding anyone who would love me. I am pretty sure he was made for me. I always wish we had met earlier, though given how long it takes him to do anything it's not really a surprise it took this long. Lol. We are expecting our first child in August. Met when he was 52 and I was 43. Would never trade a minute. I bless the broken path that led us to be together. I was single and sad after being cheated on by my then partner, so one of my friends suggested I try out Tinder as a distraction. I had always thought Tinder was just hookups and kind of cringy. He was the second date I went on. Best guy I've ever met. Tinder of all places, at 36 now 41. And I most definitely would have fucked it up if we had met earlier. A younger me couldn't have appreciated how kind and selfless she is. Having someone who brings out the best in me would have been such a ridiculous idea. We're perfect together because of when we came into each other's lives, it seems. We met through friends and socializing. A mutual friend's birthday get-together to be exact. Fuck no, I don't wish we had met sooner. If you're doing life right, you'll wince at who you were several years ago. Significant other. Glad she didn't meet me when I was a bigger idiot than I am now. Lol. Met on the train. I had the day off and was just riding random trains, personal joy, and she was going to work to fill in for someone. We wouldn't have met under any other circumstances. She approached me, gave me her card and asked me out for coffee. Happily married for 7 years. Do I wish we met earlier? No, early to mid-20s me was only concerned about clubbing and hanging out with friends. I would have probably blown her off. We both met at the right time in life. Edit, grammar. I met my wife when I was 31. She was 24. I was a complete moron in my 20s. Acted like a teenager who was even dumber than when he was a teenager. Perfect timing for me, and she helped me seriously get my shit together. Married 20 years in May, 2 teen kids. Awesome life right now. We met at the water fountain of a gym. I had never met a woman at a gym before. We met on the Coachella message boards. I was 34 and he was 30. He was looking for a ride to Coachella, I had tickets, but no one to go with. We met once for about an hour before making the 14-hour drive together. Hung out together the whole weekend, discovered we had similar tastes in music and enjoyed similar things. We didn't actually get together until about 3 months later when we met up to go to another music festival together. Music festivals have been a regular part of our 10 years together. Hopefully we'll be again soon. Stupid COVID. I don't think it would have worked if we had met earlier, although I wish we had. It took me a while to figure out how to be in a healthy relationship, and I'm glad I met him at my right time. I met him when I was 16 years old and dated his friend. As he was always the best friend, never the boyfriend type of guy. We dated long distance at 19 years old. We broke up due to something petty and the distance. We're both 34, came back into my life last November and we've been inseparable since. I've never enjoyed time whether just cuddling and quiet or talking like I do with him. I am, now, 41. I met all 3 of my husbands whilst we were both in our 30s. And, I am a twice widow. I met number 1 on a dating site. Met, got married in 3 days. Love of my life. Number 2 was #1's best friend, rebound marriage, after #1's death. Number 3 was my son's band teacher. She was a bridesmaid in my first wedding. And if we met earlier, it wouldn't have worked. She wasn't in a relationship state of mind yet. I met my partner 3 years ago through mutual friends. After 2 failed marriages I swore I would stay single forever. We moved in together 2 years ago and it's been great. I am 66, he is 55. We are incredibly happy. I don't think I wish I would have met him earlier. People are different when they are seniors compared to when we were younger, different hobbies, dreams, etc. I met my husband on the app Coffee Meets Bagel, possibly now defunct. Never hear about it. He was the first guy I first met on it about 2 weeks after I moved to a new town for a job. I was 33. He was 37. The rest is history. Married with 2 kids now. I met my partner when I was 32. We were each in the same music scene, so I'd get to see her out. I wasn't ready for a good relationship before that, so I was happy to meet her then. Last September was our 17-year anniversary. I'm glad I didn't settle and waited until I found someone that I'm really happy with. My roommate at the time was dating her friend. We stayed together, they didn't. I don't think I was ready earlier. Is 30 old to meet someone? Match.com, we were early 30s. It was chemistry at first sight. In some ways it's interesting to fantasize about having met earlier, but the reality is I was overseas, we were both fucking up other relationships, i.e. getting married and divorced. While a healthier partner might have prevented divorce, I take my share of that responsibility too. I grew a lot and he did too. Part of that was his becoming more assertive and me becoming less so. Also, I feel the best parts of youth were freedom. I didn't get into a serious relationship until my late 20s. I'm glad. I had opportunities that would not have been the same if I were tied to someone. We met in an AOL chat room for divorced people. We've been married 23 years. I was 35, he was 34. I met my wife in junior high school. We were friends in a group of friends. Never dated. Lost contact after high school. 25 years later we saw each other on social media, reacquainted as friends, then started dating, and 8 years later we married. Still happily married after 9 years. We were both different people when we were younger and agree that it wouldn't have worked out between us if we got together when we were young. Hubby and I met playing Quake II online aged 35. We were aware of each other for a good 2 years prior and played daily together. I thought he was a 16-year-old boy and he also thought I was male. We only typed to each other, so no voice, and I had a silly nickname. People didn't share too much personal stuff back then. I started going to LANs to play Q2, I mentioned this in a game. He asked if my dad played, if my dad took me to the LANs, and off went the conversation from there. Turns out we were the same age and both had become single. 21 years together, 7 years married on Valentine's Day. So I probably should get reading glasses because I read parents in the title rather than partners and was like, WTF. Now that I read it probably, these stories are really cute. This post is an ad. The weekend before Valentine's Day, all the top-level comments are about online dating and all have years of activity, no activity, and suddenly today, which means they were bought and sold accounts. Also, 30 is the median age for online dating. Met her at a party when I was 32. I wanted to ask for her number, but never had the chance for a one-on-one conversation as she and her friend were tied at the hip that night. But I knew where she worked. I called her on Monday and we had our first date the following weekend. I am glad we didn't meet any earlier than we did because she's 9 years younger than me, so it would have been pretty weird for me to be in my early 30s dating a college student. 12 years later we are still going strong with 2 kids and a happy marriage. When I was 30 met a girl in college, she was always trying to get with me, but it's like what do I do? Take you for a night out at Chuck E. Cheese or something. Recently we hooked up, I'm in my 40s and she is 31. I can comfortably be with her. If she was just a few years older, I wouldn't have chased so many women around. I think she may be the one. No. If I'd met her earlier, I'd have fucked up the relationship the same way I fucked up every relationship before her. I needed the time to become the person I needed to be to deserve her. Met through Match in our mid-30s. He was on his last week of having an active account, about to buy a house and minding his finances. I happened to swipe right. We messaged a bit, but after some awkward experiences was hesitant to give my number. I gave him the lost numbers, he replied with, "You just stole my heart." We met in person, got engaged 7 months later, married a year after that. As much as we both wish we could have met before, we know we were completely different people and lacked the maturity to have the amazing, loving, and healthy relationship we have now. Met through online dating. We lived a few hours' drive from each other but decided to meet anyway. The first year we were together, I was gone for 3/4 of it. We've been together for 5 years now and we've moved twice to different provinces, due to my job. I'm glad I met her at the time I did. If I was much younger she wouldn't be what I thought was my type. Turns out she totally was. We met on Bumble and went on a few dates. The chemistry was there but he was not in a good headspace to date and neither was I, to be honest. We broke up but kept in touch. We went on another date a few months later and I was much happier and so was he. This was in the fall of 2019, he moved in during lockdown. I am going to marry this guy and have beautiful chubby children with him someday, fingers crossed. For me, I think letting go of arbitrary things like need and, well, really kinda asking anything of the world I couldn't make happen myself seems too selfish. If it happens, it happens. And even if I'm a grandpa and I meet a kick-ass grandma I think those last dusty years would be pretty great, Yano. 35 and single. Screw you people. I was 34, divorced and destined to be the old cat lady at the end of the street. Took a job as a police dispatcher in another city. Air Force guy who worked down the hall apparently never came in until I started working there. He started coming in monthly. Then weekly. And started wearing cologne, oh no. Co-workers said, "Ooh he's cute, go out with him." First 4 times I said no. Then, one day he bent down by my desk and looked up at me and the light caught his eyes. Oh my god they were so blue. Cerulean blue, like the ocean after a storm. I fell into those eyes and never looked back. We had 16 years and 2 children. Then he had a heart attack and died at 51. Don't waste your years. Don't wish your life away. I'll tell you when I meet her. She's out there looking for me right now. I was working the window at a Starbucks drive-thru and I saw her open the passenger side door to yak into the flower bed as I was feeding her dog his cup of whipped cream. That's when I knew I had found the one for me. It is now 5 years later and we are engaged to be married. My husband and I met at a cafe in Paris when we were both 35. I'd asked him for a light and sat down at his table and we talked until the cafe closed. 2 days later we saw each other there again and made plans for dinner that night. 5 months later we married. My husband frequently says he wishes he'd met me 15 years earlier and, while yeah it'd be nice to have had even more time with him, I feel we met exactly when we were meant to. Sometimes it feels like we'd set a date to meet at that exact cafe on that exact day. When I walked in and saw him that first night it was like, oh there you are. We met playing Pokemon Go. I was 30, he was 50. Now I'm 42. We met online, then offline a few months later. He proposed the next day, and I said yes. Eloped to Vegas. No regrets. Turned out that I had actually turned him down in a Yahoo chatroom when I was pregnant with my son, and I kick myself a lot for that. Son's biological father has been absent for longer than husband has been around, and we were having massive issues during my pregnancy. It would have been much simpler. We sometimes have wistful conversations about what it would have been like to grow up together. We both had really shitty childhoods, and to have a refuge of any sort would have changed us a lot. But I'll never regret finally finding him. I got divorced. Nothing tragic, we just weren't right for each other. I was back to dating and it was fun but wasn't really clicking with anyone. I was thinking about people who I knew that might be partner material. Then I remembered meeting her at a party and wanted to try to connect. Meanwhile, her sister heard that I got divorced and told her to pursue me. My significant other thought it might be too soon, only a few months. We went on a date anyway. Fast forward to 4 years later. Our baby, first for both of us, will be here in 2 months and we're engaged to be married sometime in the next year or so. Success. We met at a conference. No, it was the right time for us. Any earlier and we wouldn't have got together. My choosing was wiser as a 43-year-old. I looked for responsibility, not tits or from lust. My wife is incredible. I don't really deserve her. We were the only straight single people at a Christmas party, so people kept finding ways to get us to interact. Been together for the first 13 of many more years, guess it worked. Sadly she was widowed a few years before we met, so I guess no one wishing we met earlier. He was a pretty great guy. It's weird but I kinda wish I knew him. Best thing I can do is take care of and love her in his place.